earlier I was thinking about how 90% of the time, I meet girls or ladies, their boyfriends, I meet their boyfriends. I just want to ask the girls, like, what the hell were you thinking? What do you see in this dude, right? And I'm serious. Yeah, there's a lot of things that don't add up. The other question I have for some of you is, what percentage of people are in relationships because they don't think that they could get better or do better? So they're afraid to take a step out and be alone for a while versus, they are totally happy in their relationship, right? And a little side note here, very few adults actually know about themselves. They don't know themselves very well. How many of you have stayed in a relationship because it was the best thing you could do at the time, or because you didn't want to be alone? You feel safe, but there's no long-term future with the person, right? And by the way, there is a book I highly recommend by Sigmund Freud. It's called Group Psychology and the Analysis of the Ego. He says that the closest analogy to love is hypnotism. People get hypnotized and they forget to see the flaws. They ignore the red flag. So you could see this guy, he's really charming and sweet, and you think, oh, he's so spiritual, he reminds me of Jesus, he's got the white robe, the long hair, he's got all the beads and medallions, he lights sage, he says he's got the verbiage down, but your friend and your mom, they're not hypnotized. See, they see the truth, they see through him, they can see him as he really is, which could be narcissistic, he could be psychotic, Machiavellian, sociopathic, all of the above, right? Because for a relationship to work, you guys already know this, you have to be honest and transparent. You have to be totally transparent and vulnerable. Look, I've been in the past, long ago, I've been in, relationships where, I was like, man, this girl really seems to like me, but I don't know if she loves me or loves being in love. It's like being in love with the idea of being in love, if that makes sense. I've also had some pretty weird experiences with, like, obsessive people, people that gaslight me. So a lot of that personality stuff, I know, like, I've had experience with it. I talked about it before, and it had a lot to do with why I didn't see all those things at first, because I'm still learning. Now, this is a perfect example of people that they just love being in love. One of my old friends from Texas whom I used to play music with, first time I met him, he was all cool, and we talked about relationships and women, and he was like, dude, I met the love of my life. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah. So we would be working on some song, right? Writing lovey-dovey songs in the living room and stuff, and he would get inspired by the music, and he'd go out there looking for some girl. I thought that was cool, and, I thought it was kind of a rare case a little bit, because I hadn't met the woman he was referring to. So 3 months later, he's at the house, and he's talking mad love, right? He's just talking mad love, and, I met this love of my life. I'm like, wait, is this the same girl you were telling me about 3 months ago? Like, what happened to that girl? He was like, dude, forget her. This is the love of my life. So he would always say, I finally met the one, Alex, I finally met the one, she's the one. And so I would give him, I'd give him a hard time. I'd tease him about that. Like, is this really the one, Ed? Like, you said that about the last 5 girls. So it was kind of funny, but, over and over, he's had, like, the love of his life, like, 27 times, probably in the last, 10 years or so. So one day we're having this conversation. We're having a deep conversation about love. And I said, dude, I don't think you're actually in love, You like the attention, the companionship, and the novelty of meeting new women, but I don't think you're actually in love with what Freud called, the ego object. So you don't really give a shit about the person. You just love being in love, So my question to you guys and girls out there is, did you or do you actually feel in love, or is it that you just love being in love? Do we have issues? Maybe, we might. Hey, everybody's a work in progress, right? Because some of us, believe it or not, some of us actually love someone. And it isn't anything to do with, ego object or love haze. It isn't, we're not hypnotized. We recognize a person's flaws. We know their traumas from their past, right? But we still hold space for them. We still love them unconditionally. How many people can actually say that this is true for them as well? What is it about some men and women that make us feel drawn to them, even if we know that they're no good for us? If you want to know the actual psychology, when you're about 5 years old, you form an attachment with your parents, right? There's this thing called the K factor. So if you have a fucked up initial 5 years of your life where you don't see love, you don't see affection, you basically, your mind basically creates a mental map that's all backwards, really. You'll learn that being attached to a good person means, that creates pain. So, but it also creates narcissism. Most narcissists overcompensated. They weren't loved by their parents, or maybe they weren't loved by their dad, the rich dad, or the rich mom, or whatever, right? So people think that narcissism comes from too many compliments. Not really. Not when you're young. When you're young and your parents don't, they don't compliment you, you overcompensate. And you're like, I'm going to be hot. I'm, too sexy for myself. Look at me go. I'm a badass. That's where that comes from. And it's the same thing with the whole avoidant thing where, you tend to settle for someone because you feel safe. You feel safe with them. You're not in love with the person, but because you feel safe, you stay with them. So most people, by the time they're 18 years old, the mind is, fucked up. It's like the wires that can't be rewired almost. I mean, very few people can change, especially after the age of 25. That's what David M. Buss found out. He's one of the top psychologists in the world. And some people can change, like 20 to 30%. And some people change through personal transformation or through divine intervention. They can flip a 360, but it's rare. You guys remember I mentioned some of the best personality traits out there that reveal a lot about a person, right? There was a dark triad, there's a big five, and of course the mother lode of them all is called the HEXACO. The first thing you want to look at is the dark triad. So you look at narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychosis, or being psychotic, okay? If they score high on narcissism, you can do what's called the Narcissistic Personality Inventory, or NPI test. Okay, so narcissism is someone who loves themselves and can't see things from other people's perspectives. They only see one side of the story, their own. And there are 6 aspects in narcissism. And you've got authority, superiority, exhibitionism, vanity, entitlement, and I think exploitativeness. Those are subcategories. Now, for you ladies out there, how many of you have met a guy who's good looking? Maybe he works out. He's always taking pictures of himself working out, drives a nice car, but he's a douchebag. He's trash. He's a piece of crap. See, because narcissists, they go for the charm, but they make you feel like you're not enough. They kind of make you feel guilty. They throw all the blame on you. There's certain things to look out for. Okay, yeah, look, I've had a few friends whom I've known for many years. Some are like tech-savvy guys, some are fitness models, some of the girls are lingerie models I've done photo shoots with. Some are recording artists that I work with in my studio. And even though I've known them for quite some time, I never figured out what was wrong with them until I gave them the NPI test. And one of the gals, she's funny. I mean, she's cool. But she's funny because she would say stuff like, dude, you never call me. And I'm like, you never call me. And she couldn't do the math in her head, She was like, I mean, because how are you going to call someone out if they don't call you or text you? But now I know. So I had her take this, the NPI test. And man, let me tell you, her entitlement score, through the roof. It's like, because entitlement is like, the world owes me lots of stuff. Or, You need to prove that you really care for me, just me. So anyway, if the guy or girl that you're interested in scores high on narcissism within the dark triad, have them take the NPI test. And that's kind of like the X-ray for the brain. Sometimes people like to argue with me, and I tell them, man, do you argue with an X-ray? Like if an X-ray shows that you have a broken arm, are you going to say, oh, no, it's all good, it's all good? No, your bone is broke, right? Like you can't use your arm for a while. The NPI will reveal what broken parts of your brain you have. Then after this, it's time to get a life coach, a mentor, a spiritual guide, maybe see a counselor, maybe shock therapy. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, the second thing you want to look for is Machiavellianism. Some of you may have dated a woman or a guy who, said one thing to you, but behind your back did the complete opposite. Some people are sneaky. They hide their manipulative ways, and they're not straightforward with you. So you can do a Machiavellian inventory on them as well. And the third one is psychotic. How many of you have seen a guy or a girl who didn't show emotions? They just didn't respond emotionally to anything. Have you ever been with someone who basically had no emotion? If so, why? Think about the things that, that you found attractive about him or her. And I get that in the beginning. You don't see it because of the crazy love spell, the butterflies in your stomach. But usually, there'll be something. There's usually something that triggers them. It could be a certain type of sound, a loud noise, a sound, a movie, a movie that you were both watching, something you said or something you laughed at, that'll trigger them. Or nothing at all. They just make stuff up in their head, and next thing you know, they're choking your ass or they're lighting your bed on fire, right? So this is why it's important that you surround yourself with people who genuinely love other people, people who know what relationships are for, people that have a good, healthy relationship with their parents. That's number one. Get to know people who are not on drugs, who don't run away from solutions. They don't run away from what's good for them. Because I tell you, man, you meet these people that you offer solutions for, and they make excuses every time. And you need to be around people who aren't afraid of being vulnerable, and they're honest, who want to heal and be happy, and who are ready to let go and let God. Okay. You can meet someone and ask them, as you get to know them, you can say, hey, tell me about your parents, tell me about your mom and dad. The problem is that like attracts like, and fucked up people, become friends with fucked up people. And some people become antisocial because they're afraid and never healed from their past traumas, and they build up walls and they don't want to be around other people because they're so insecure. There's a good book on this called The Age Factor of Personality, and it's I can't remember the guy's name, but it's written by the guy that created the HEXACO score. He basically said that for the most part, people go towards people of equal levels. So if you're narcissistic, most of your friends are going to be narcissistic, right? Like if you had bad parents and you were raised, you were brought up by a single mom, most people you hang out with, they're going to have the same upbringing, or, you'll attract people who had a single mom or a single dad. Like alley cats, you guys will congregate at Starbucks or some bookstore, and that's just the way it is. As far as people being clingy or dependent on you, guys, that's all part of loving someone, being loved. When you do the test, and I'll post a link below here, look at the girl's dependence factor, and look at the guy's dependence. If there's no dependence, then why do you want to be with somebody? You gotta be a little dependent on somebody. I'm dependent on my business partners. I depend on my project assistant. I'm that way with my close friends, and it took me years to get comfortable with that idea, but I did it. It helps to know your personality type, how it all applies to all of this, whether you're an INFP, ISFJ, or ENFP, doesn't matter. I stands for introversion, E for extroversion, F stands for feeling, meaning you're the feely type, not so much a thinker. J means judging, and P for perceiving. So a lot of my friends have the J in their personality trait, right? And they can make plans way in advance, you know, with no problem, from work-related projects to vacationing. And P's like me, man, if you make me, you know, if you start making me plan 6 months in advance for something, you know, ahead of time, I get all stressed. I get wigged out. I wig out. In fact, I tell my assistant or whoever's helping me with a certain project, only tell me my day's plans the morning of. The morning I wake up is when I want to know what I have to do for the day, or else I'll think about it all day. I'll be like, oh man, it's Friday. What day is it? Like, okay, what's today? Because if I know things ahead of time, it's gonna ruin. It just ruins my entire week or my entire month, because, you know, I'm constantly thinking. I'm thinking, oh, I got to be there on time, and I got all this shit I need to do by then. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to think about that. I want to be in the present today. Knowing yourself and getting to know other people beyond the surface is invaluable, and it can save you a lot of trouble and heartache. Anyway, until next time, peace out.